S stands for safety, right? B, belonging. P, yep, sense of purpose. And C, competence. Good. Okay, yeah, 4. Yeah, just remember that we become more resilient when we think that the world sees us as being good at something. And it's so important that self-efficacy piece of competence, because it's about believing we have the resources and can use them to get what we want. And so that's why it's so important to make things relevant to people. All the work that we do with veterans, I would say especially, but certainly with a lot of kids, that all the resources in the world aren't going to help if that person isn't going to avail themselves of them, isn't going to reach out for help or accept that help or see that that's relevant to them. And so that's also that piece of growing that sense of competence and walking through the world in that way of just believing that help is available, and you see that path forward, and you can start to get that help and grow those strengths. I set forth this truth about what we can't do and what we can do, and we hear a lot about people are broken or kids are broken or this work. Sometimes people say, oh, that resilience stuff, it's about fixing. There's a lot of broken people in the world, so is that what you do? You fix the broken people? And I'm like, no, that's not what we do, because we can't fix people, and we certainly can't help people heal, especially if they have been hurt or controlled by hurting or controlling, right? We can't shame someone toward greater strength or resilience. So what can we do? I think that Allison did a beautiful job in the video in her own words, but we can seek to understand and respond to a person's need. That's what's within a reach. I just did a week-long study with Dr. Clarissa Pinkola-Estes, and she always talks about what's within your reach. How do you just start, in our words, how do you start where you are with what you have and do what you can? And that's what we can always do. We can always look at the person who is directly in front of us and see what we can do to better understand them and help respond to the needs that they are exhibiting. We can be curious. We can have an open mind, open heart about what are those needs that they are expressing and how can we better work toward meeting them. And I know this is a counter-societal approach. For many of us, it's certainly a counter-organizational approach that we live in these systems that don't focus on this. So within a school, what do they focus on? Number one, academic success, right? Test scores. Some focus on the positive behaviors. They're focusing on changing behaviors. They're focusing on minimizing disruptive behaviors. But that's really where the key focus is, where the research is showing, the science of resilience is showing, that it's really about the elements that we've been talking about today, these thrive elements beginning with trusted relationships. That's what the research shows has the biggest impact. And then a lot of what we're focusing on, putting attention on, pouring money into, a lot of that is outcomes, if we could only go and focus on the foundational pieces that we've been talking about today. And so we really are, in many ways, trying to support you in being certainly advocates and activists, but really being bold in taking this counter-societal approach. And it's really an approach of embracing our big why. We're going to watch a video here, but it's about that questions that were raised earlier today that Paula was talking about of why did you first become a teacher or a social worker or a service provider? Why? What's your biggest why? And to keep that in front of you every day as you serve the kids. And then I have a quote here by Brene Brown. She did some education for us a few years ago. But first we're going to watch this great video. I always almost want to end with this because it's just mic drop at the end. So if you haven't seen this, enjoy it. And if you have, I don't think it ever gets old. But just a quick video on really letting our why be our guiding light.
It's called How Do I Know? And a lot of times when people hear the phrase, how do I know, the next thing they say is what? How do I know what? But the key really isn't to know what, the key is to know why. Because when you know your why, you have options on what your what can be. For instance, my why is to inspire people to walk in purpose. My what is stand-up comedy. My what is writing books. My what can be going out with some friends to eat. In fact, another what that has moved me towards my why is a web series that we have out now called Break Time. So every Wednesday at 3 o'clock, you should subscribe to the channel. We do a series called Break Time on YouTube. So 3 o'clock, we drop a new episode. One episode in particular, I'm about to show you a clip to. We were in Winston-Salem. So Break Time, this is how it works. I travel the country, I do stand-up comedy, probably an hour, hour and a half at an event. And in the middle of my show, I'll just sit down and start talking to the audience. And funny just happens. Or I'll meet somebody who's really interesting. So I met this one guy, and he said that he teaches music at a school. I was like, all right, you teach music, can you sing? And then I'm just going to show you the clip. Check it. So you're a musical director. Yes, sir. All right, so let me get a couple bars of like Amazing Grace. Can you do the first part of that? Go ahead. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. Wow. That girl could sing. You know what I'm saying? All right. Now, what you give me the version is if your uncle just got out of jail, you got shot in the back when you was a kid. I'm just saying, let me see the hood version real quick. If you know the version I'm talking about, just see if that exists. Let me see what you got. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. So here's the thing. The first time I asked him to sing, he knew what he was doing. The second time I asked him to sing, he knew why he was doing it. When you know your why, your what has more impact because you're walking in or towards your purpose.
Okay. So when we are working in the organizations, in the cultures, in the society that we are in, it is so essential that we know our what, that we remember it, that we connect with it, that we cultivate it, that we support each other in remembering it. That's why it's so fun when Paula and Kristen and I, even on a tired day, as you know, with 2 a.m. travel, that we still have a whole lot of fun because this is our why, right? To help you go and build stronger kids and strengthen others. And so that's so important to be connected to that why. Brene had said when she did one of our national conferences, whenever you hear someone does resilience work, that means those are the people who are willing to wade waist high into the hard stuff. With kids, with families, with communities. It's important. And it is so ever important. And you guys are on the front lines of it. And it's just a huge honor for us to be here supporting you doing that work. But it really is a counter-cultural message in many ways, that we're preaching love here, right? We're preaching being more human. And we're preaching in many ways just, I have a colleague who works with the military, he's former military, and he said in so many ways what we're doing is back to the future. It's really kind of dialing back things in many ways. And as the speed of life moves more quickly and technology moves more quickly and some of the societal shifts, that have some momentum are moving the way that they are, we're the ones that have to take a step back. We're the ones that have to take that deep breath and be reminded of what works. And it really is that human connection that works. So a few friendly reminders. Start where you are. All right, start where you are. What's in your reach? Build from there. Focus on strengths. Catch kids doing good stuff. Catch colleagues and staff doing good stuff. Catch yourself doing good stuff and celebrate all of that. And one of my favorite sayings from my gym, my CrossFit gym, progress, not perfection. Have it on our t-shirts, right? It's about progress and moving forward, not perfection. We are here in many ways to support you. So a lot of the resources we shared today, you can find at the nationalresilienceinstitute.org site or mymollymarty.com site. If you ever need to reach out to me, just put my name, M-O-L-L-I-E, in front of either of those, and that goes to me. Or if you want someone who's much more organized and probably timely in responses and go directly to Karen, just put an info at either of those and you will get a quick reply as well. You can sign up. We have newsletters on both of those sites. Some of the videos we showed today, educational videos, you can use those, pull them into your classrooms, whatever that looks like. Learning opportunities, our summits, opportunities like this. We have right now a Thrive Education and Support package going on that we're going to continue going forward. That is under Kristen's care, but it's monthly calls because you can only take in so much. We've covered a lot today. We're always kind of pacing that and making decisions as we go and trying to give you time to integrate, and then you're going to walk out of here and go back into your lives and world. And so you might go, oh, I need to learn more about that, or I'm really curious, or gosh, I was thinking I wanted to talk to Paula about that, but I didn't. So what does that look like? And these are calls, what we do monthly with groups, and so far these are all schools. So I know that we have a group here, for example, from the same school, and you might go back as champions at that school and say, okay, we want this, where it's 30 minutes of education, 30 minutes of Q&A and discussion. We provide more Thrive tools and show you how to implement. We give you little guides, professional development curriculums, things like that. You have an open line, an email, a Thrive helpline with Kristen. And right now, thanks to the graciousness of the East Central region, the MHDS, that you can have this at no cost to your schools. If you have a group that's really after it, you can join what's going on. Those calls, I think the third Wednesday of the month, they're all recorded. So ideally, you show up, you're working together, you keep pulling people in, you have your, whatever you call them in your schools. They might be called Thrive teams, PBIS teams, social emotional resilience teams, whatever that looks like. And then I know some of you aren't with schools, you're with service providers, and we also have had discussions with ECR about basing this in community. So just if you have an interest in this or what it might look like, so say you're in Manchester, or say you're in Dubuque, or say you're in Farley or Piasta, or whatever that looks like within Dubuque or Delaware, what would that look like if a group of stakeholders came together and you started to join this education and started to walk that out? We have a depth of experience in not only within schools, but community-based resilience, because we strongly believe, we know, we've seen it again and again, schools can't do this work alone. And so the more that we can mobilize communities, the more that we can get trusted adults, not just within the four walls of the school, but that surrounding community, we've been doing a lot of that type of work. So that is one special resource and invitation I wanted to point out to you. The other is we have a Train the Trainer, and it's really that next level. And so if you're interested in getting trained up so that you can, there's two options. One, just train within your school, and you can get certified and train at no cost. You're not out there charging the world. You're just having us support you, and you have the templates and the slides for a 1 hour, full day, meet PD, all of that. It just is another level. Or perhaps you have an interest in doing more of what Kristen or Paula or I do and go out into the broader, whether the state of Iowa or the nation or whatever that looks like, and become a certified trainer. But we're in this process of doing all of that, so I wanted to mention that. I know we've had some conversations with some of you about how that looks like. So the last story, usually I read this from my book. I wrote a book about my life's greatest mentor, and when I do that authentic relations meditation. Judge is one, even though I met him later in my life as a young green lawyer. I went across the country to Pennsylvania and I clerked for a Third Circuit Court of Appeals judge. And this is him when his clerks gave him a bicycle one year for his birthday, and he was just giddy, and he was still playful. He lived until he was 96 years old, and in his latter years, he actually went to work in a federal building that was renamed after him while he was still living. So his name was Max Rosen, and every day he went to work in the Max Rosen Federal Building. He worked in all three branches of the government, and he was just an extraordinary leader, a servant leader. And like I said, my life's greatest mentor. So I wrote a book called Walking with Justice, and it's actually based on his eulogy. And so the eulogies that his two sons gave about their father, and then I break that up and it has flashbacks to what formed him, who formed him, what was the impact of some people in his life, or how did he pass on those lessons to me and to other clerks. And it was really an interesting process of writing this. It was really a love story, and things would just come to me, and stories would come across, my inbox, or somebody would say something, and I just would know, like, oh, that needs to go in the book, or oh, that. I would have experiences where once I remember hearing a word, and I wasn't familiar with the word or what it meant. It was a Jewish word, and but I knew that's in the book, right? It was just kind of a really interesting creative process. And so one story that came across, and it's called, in a book chapter, there was a teacher, but it was about a professor at Johns Hopkins University. And this professor went out into a very impoverished area, and he assessed these boys and the risk factors in their life and what was going on, and he made a prediction about how many of these boys would end up serving time, going to jail or prison. And 25 years later, another round of grad students at Johns Hopkins was sent out to test the prediction. How accurate were they? How many of these boys grew up, were young men, and had gone to prison? So they tracked down over 80% of the men. They counted for the few that had died, but a very, very low percentage of these men had ended up serving any time. And the researchers were puzzled by that. And they thought, why? What could this be? And they started to do these interviews, and the name of this one woman kept coming up time and time again. And these boys would say, young men now, these men would say, well, there was a teacher. And they would tell a story of this woman. Well, there was a teacher, and they would tell the story of the same woman. So the researchers looked up this woman. She was still alive. They went to her home, and they had a conversation with her and said, time and time again, it's been shown you had this big impact on these men, and we predicted they'd be in jail, and they weren't, and it really seems, she was a protective factor in our words, it really seemed you had this tremendous impact on them. Could you explain that? How would you have such a big impact on all of these men? And she shook her head and said, no, I really couldn't. And then she got this faraway look in her eyes. And as she's sitting with the researchers, she says, much more to herself than to them, I love those boys. That's the power of an educator. That's the power of putting into practice what we're talking about today. It's love. It's being as human as we can be and keep figuring out ways where we can be more human as individuals and support each other in that, so that we can meet certainly our needs, but also the needs of all of these young people that we have the honor, the privilege, and the responsibility to help care for. So thank you again for joining us at the Thrive training. Like I said, we are here to support you any which way we can, and we're just really grateful for the start of the conversation today. So thank you.